He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Do you know who my father is?" And that's when I knew this kid had no idea what was about to happen to him. I am about to tell you a story that'll make you believe the system can still work. Because what happened in my courtroom that morning wasn't just about one drunk driver. It was about whether money and power still mean you can destroy someone's life and walk away smiling. Spoiler, not in my house. Listen, before I tell you what I did to this senator's son, you need to understand something. This wasn't some kid who made one mistake. This was a 22-year-old who had been protected his entire life. Every screw-up, every DUI, every bar fight. Daddy made phone calls. Charges disappeared, life moved on. He learned the most dangerous lesson a person can learn. The rules don't apply to me. And then, he almost killed a grandmother. Let me paint you a picture. Saturday night. Dorothy Chen, 71 years old, walking home from church. She'd done this walk 1,000 times. 15 years, same route, same crosswalk, same peaceful end to her Saturday evening. She stepped into that crosswalk with the light. Everything legal, everything safe. And a black Mercedes, going double the speed limit, drunk driver behind the wheel, ran that red light at full speed. The impact threw her 15 feet. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. He felt it. He had to have felt it. His windshield cracked. There was a sound. But that Mercedes never slowed down, never stopped, just kept going. Left her bleeding in the street like she was nothing. Dorothy would have died right there if a young mother driving home from her restaurant shift hadn't seen everything and called 911. Maria Santos saved her life that night, while the driver who hit her was already home, safe in his mansion, making phone calls. But not to the police. Oh no. 22 minutes after impact, this kid calls Daddy, his father, the senator. The man who campaigns on law and order and personal responsibility. And Daddy? He calls the police chief at 12:30 in the morning. You seeing the pattern here? They waited 6 hours to arrest him. 6 hours. Just long enough for his blood alcohol to drop below the legal limit. When he hit Dorothy, he was at 0.15, nearly double the limit. By the time they tested him, 0.06, under the legal threshold. That's not procedure. That's a cover-up. Meanwhile, Dorothy's in surgery getting her pelvis reconstructed. 3 separate fractures. Shattered knee. Broken hip that'll never heal right. Traumatic brain injury. At 71 years old, this woman who spent 45 years as a nurse saving other people's lives suddenly can't walk on her own anymore. The medical bills? $347,000. She sold her dead husband's car to pay part of it. Had to borrow from her kids. Set up payment plans she'll never finish paying off. All because some rich kid decided his convenience mattered more than her life. Now here's where it gets interesting. Comment. Justice, if you think senator's kid should face the same consequences as everyone else. 3 months later, this kid walks into my courtroom like he's doing me a favor by showing up. $5,000 suit, Rolex, lawyer charging $800 an hour, who's never lost a case in Providence. And Daddy sitting front row, arms crossed, looking at me like I'm about to be reminded of my place. But you know who else was there? Dorothy, in a wheelchair, trying to make herself invisible in the back. And something in me just snapped. The prosecutor laid it all out. Traffic cameras, eyewitness testimony. The paint transfer on Dorothy's jacket matching his car. Phone records showing he called Daddy before 911. The senator calling the police chief. Dorothy's devastating medical records. This whole time, I'm watching Brandon. That's his name, Brandon Whitfield. He's checking his phone during Dorothy's medical testimony. He's whispering to his lawyer and actually laughing while they're describing Dorothy's broken pelvis. When the woman who saved Dorothy's life describes seeing the Mercedes drag her body 15 feet, this kid rolls his eyes. Rolls his eyes. Then I ask him if he has anything to say. You know what he tells me? Your Honor, this whole thing has been blown completely out of proportion. Pause. Let that sink in. He almost killed a grandmother, left her bleeding in a crosswalk. And it's been blown out of proportion. But wait, it gets better. Do you know who my father is? He's a United States Senator. This case should never have made it to trial. It should have been handled privately. Handled. Privately. Like Dorothy's shattered body is a PR problem to be managed. Like 71 years of life, 45 years of nursing, a husband she loved and buried, 4 grandchildren she adores. Like none of that matters because his daddy's powerful. The courtroom went dead silent. Even his expensive lawyer looked like she knew she was about to lose her first case. But here's what really made me sick. Because the corruption didn't stop at the accident. Dorothy had been getting anonymous calls. Drop the charges. This is bad for everyone. You're making things difficult. Her grandson works as a paralegal. Suddenly his employer gets calls questioning his judgment, right after Grandma refuses to drop charges. What a coincidence. Maria Santos, the witness who saved Dorothy. 2 men show up at her house claiming to be investigators, suggesting she reconsider her statement, reminding her she has 2 young children. And then the big move. They offer Dorothy $500,000, $500,000 to a woman drowning in medical debt, a woman who sold her husband's car to pay bills, a woman borrowing from her own kids. You know what Dorothy said? No, I don't want his money, I want him to face what he did. I'm going to say that again because it deserves to be heard twice. Money won't teach him anything. Consequences will. If you think Dorothy Chen is a hero, hit that subscribe button right now. When it came time for victim statements, Dorothy wheeled herself to the front, her voice steady. After everything, the 4 months in the hospital, the 3 surgeries, knowing she'll never walk normally again, her voice was completely steady. She looked at Brandon and said, I spent 45 years seeing what drunk drivers do to people. I've held dying patients' hands. I've told families their loved ones didn't make it. And then I became one of those statistics. You left me bleeding in the street like garbage. Like 71 years of life didn't matter because I was in your way. I survived my husband's death. I survived cancer. I fought through chemo and radiation. And then on August 16th, I almost didn't survive your son. I'm not here for money. Your family offered me $500,000 to go away. I said no. I'm not here for revenge. I don't hate you. I'm here because hit-and-run drivers should face consequences, even if their father is a senator. Maybe especially if their father is a senator. Brandon sat there stone-faced. Not a tear. Not a flicker of remorse. Just that same irritated look, like this dignified woman was inconveniencing him. That's when I'd had enough. I looked past Brandon to his father in the front row. Senator Whitfield, I said, you've served Rhode Island for 18 years. You've made speeches about law and order. You've voted for mandatory minimums. You've built a career on the idea that actions have consequences. But when your son got drunk, got behind the wheel of a $165,000 Mercedes, ran a red light, hit a 71-year-old grandmother, and left her to die in the street, you tried to make it disappear. You called the police chief at 12:30 in the morning. Your lawyers offered money to silence the victim. You used your power to put your son above the law. That's not public service, Senator. That's corruption. And I want you to understand something. You're in my courtroom now. In here, you're not a senator. You're just a father who failed to teach his son that actions have consequences. And you're about to watch him learn that lesson the hard way. The senator tried to interrupt. Actually stood up like he was about to give a speech. I held up my hand. Senator Whitfield, sit down. Dead. Silence. Every eye in that room locked on this powerful politician, red-faced, not used to being told what to do. If you interrupt my courtroom again, I'll have you removed. Sit down. He sat down, didn't say another word. Because in that moment, all his power, all his phone calls, all his connections, meant nothing. I looked at Brandon. Mr. Whitfield, you've been found guilty. DUI, hit and run causing serious bodily injury, reckless endangerment, leaving the scene, failure to render aid, and witness intimidation. You showed zero remorse. You checked your phone during testimony about Dorothy's injuries. You laughed with your attorney. You told me this case should never have made it to trial because of who your father is. You treated this courtroom, this victim, and this process with contempt. Here's what I gave him. 18 months in state prison. No work release, no early release, no special treatment. You'll serve your time like every other inmate. $400,000 in restitution to Dorothy Chen. 5-year license suspension. 500 hours of community service at the trauma center where Dorothy worked, so you can see firsthand what drunk driving does. And a formal public apology published in the Providence Journal, so everyone in Rhode Island knows what you did and what you faced. The bailiff approached with handcuffs. That's when everything changed. The arrogance vanished. The smirk disappeared. Brandon looked at his father, voice breaking. Dad, do something. You can't let this happen. And for the first time, Senator Richard Whitfield looked helpless, because there was nothing he could do. Not in my courtroom. Brandon started crying. I can't go to prison. I have my whole life ahead of me. I'm supposed to graduate. I have plans. I have a future. I looked at him. Mr. Whitfield, Dorothy Chen had plans too. She planned to walk home from church that night. She planned to see her grandchildren that weekend. She planned to live without chronic pain, without a wheelchair, without $347,000 in debt. You took all of that away from her. You have 18 months to think about that. Bailiff, take him into custody. The click of those handcuffs echoed through the silent courtroom. And then something happened I'll never forget. Dorothy wheeled herself forward. This tiny 71-year-old woman, legs still in a brace, visible scars on her arms, approached the crying 22-year-old who almost killed her. Brandon, she said quietly, look at me. He looked at her through his tears, all the arrogance gone. I don't hate you. I need you to understand that. I spent 45 years as a nurse. I've seen what hate does to people. It destroys them from the inside. I'm not here for revenge. Revenge doesn't heal broken bones. It doesn't pay medical bills. I'm here because the law matters. 18 months is a long time. Use it. Don't waste it feeling sorry for yourself. Spend it becoming someone your father can actually be proud of. Not because of his name or his power, but because of your character. I hope you learn. I really do. Because I don't want there to be another Dorothy Chen. Learn it. Become better. Prove these 18 months meant something. Brandon couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears streaming. As the bailiff led him away, he looked back at Dorothy one more time. Not with arrogance, not with irritation, with something that might have been the beginning of understanding. Dorothy's grace was more powerful than any anger could have been. I looked at everyone in that courtroom and said, this is what justice looks like. It doesn't matter if your father is a senator or the president. It doesn't matter how much money your family has. When you get drunk, hit a grandmother in a crosswalk and leave her bleeding in the street while you call daddy. You go to prison. The law applies to everyone. Brandon Whitfield walked into my courtroom like he owned the city. He walked out in handcuffs, crying for his father. Dorothy Chen wheeled in with nothing but her dignity. She left with justice. Let me tell you how this ended. Brandon served 14 months, completed his alcohol treatment, did his 500 hours at the trauma center. According to staff who worked with him, something changed. He showed up. He did the work. He listened. Maybe Dorothy's words got through. Maybe 14 months in prison taught him what his father never could. Senator Whitfield ran for re-election in 2026. This case became a major campaign issue. Voters remembered. He lost by 8 points. He's not in the Senate anymore. He's a lobbyist now, but his name doesn't carry the same weight. Dorothy's medical bills got paid from the restitution. All of it. Plus, additional funds for her pain and suffering. She still uses a wheelchair most days, still has chronic pain, still has headaches from the brain injury. But she volunteers at Rhode Island Hospital 3 days a week in the same trauma unit where she worked for 45 years. She reads to patients, holds their hands, tells them they're going to be okay. She does what she's always done. She takes care of people. 6 months after Brandon got released, Dorothy received a letter from him. She almost didn't open it, but she did. Brandon didn't make excuses. He took responsibility. He apologized with specifics. He acknowledged what he'd done to her, what he'd taken, how his arrogance almost cost her her life. He told her about prison, about working in the trauma center, about seeing what drunk driving really does. He told her she'd been right. He needed to become someone his father could actually be proud of, Dorothy wrote back. 2 sentences. I believe that people can change. Prove you've changed. Actions, not words. I don't know if Brandon Whitfield will prove it, but I know this. On that November morning in my courtroom, justice was served. A powerful senator's son learned he's not above the law. A 71-year-old grandmother got the justice she deserved. And everyone watching learned that sometimes, at least sometimes, the system works exactly the way it's supposed to work. Money doesn't buy justice. Power doesn't trump the law. And a nurse's life matters just as much as a senator's son's life. That's the America I believe in. That's the America I tried to protect that day. And that's the America Dorothy Chen fought for when she refused $500,000 and demanded accountability instead. If this story moved you, share it with someone who's lost faith in the system. Because today, the system worked. Subscribe if you believe justice still matters. Comment consequences if you think the entitled need to learn this lesson. And remember Dorothy Chen. Remember that grace is stronger than revenge, that dignity matters more than money, and that sometimes one person standing up for what's right can change everything. This is a dramatization for storytelling and educational purposes. It is not legal advice, not based on a real case, and not intended as factual reporting.